Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Empire Life podcast. I'm your host, Allison Ramsey. And on the Empire Life podcast, we dive really deep with founders from all around the world, all about how they got to point A to point Z in their success stories, learning deeply about them that probably they don't share out these things anywhere else, or maybe they do, but we don't. We get to dive deeper here with them and learn their secrets to success, and then be able to immediately apply those. Empire Life is a coaching and mentoring company, and we support female founders in scaling their online empires. And today, our special guest is Dr. Noor Ali, and she is a Bangladeshi American medical doctor who her business is helping entrepreneurs to navigate health insurance. And I'll hand it over to her a little bit more to introduce herself.
Yes, thank you so much, Allison. Thank you for this opportunity, being able to speak here to your audience and talk more about myself, which is awesome. Who doesn't love doing that? I'm originally from Bangladesh. I grew up in New York City. I went to medical school straight out of high school, and my whole life and career was really just all about medicine. And then I did my master's in public health. So it was all very heavily science based. And now I'm a business owner in health insurance. So there was a big learning curve there, just kind of understanding how to go from a lifetime of deep science to business.
I want to dive deeper into that as well further in the podcast because I definitely personally relate of being in software engineering and medical sciences, with all of my studies, mostly the duration, and then realizing when I started, this is my third company, but even with that, the realization of, oh my gosh, I feel as if I've given myself an MBA almost with
Yes.
launching and scaling 3 companies.
Oh my God. When I read Allison, your chapter in the Empire Life book, I was like resonating and connecting so much, like that the amount of learning that you have through your experiences and your failures, there's nothing that can replace that. Even if you had actually gotten an MBA, you wouldn't have learned as much as you did, like through learning the way you did. So you're absolutely right. And I feel the same way. Like it's like giving yourself an MBA.
Exactly. And reading all the books, figuring out, oh my gosh, I didn't learn anything about even from myself, speaking personally, I didn't learn anything about finances, budgeting, investments, planning for losses, business losses and gains, what that looks like over the course of quarters, what are quarters of the year even. I had no idea.
Yeah. Yes. Oh my gosh.
And I want to go ahead and dive right in to the first question, Dr. Noor. What are some challenges that you feel like you've overcome, and how did you overcome these? And how did you benefit? How did you benefit from overcoming these? And that at the end of this, like we were talking about, and thank you so much for talking about my chapter. It was a huge project, and I'm very proud of publishing the redefined book. And at the end of all of this, how did this make you stronger?
Of course. And yeah, thank you so much, Allison. Great job. I mean, you deserve to be proud of your work. And I'm going to answer this question with just what we were talking about. Actually, my biggest challenge was knowing absolutely nothing about business. Coming from an educational background of pure medical science, I didn't even have an undergrad degree. I went straight to medical school after high school. So, and then now I'm operating a business. So a lot of figuring things out the hard way. And the biggest way that I overcame this is reading and teaching myself. So I love reading, but I love reading fiction. I actually never pick up a nonfiction book until I started my business. And I was like, holy shit, I don't know anything about what I'm doing. I'm just kind of like scrambling to get by. And the only way I knew how was to read and learn about it. So I would read, I still do 3 to 5 books, nonfiction business books each week, just to teach myself things that like marketing, my biggest struggle. I knew nothing about marketing. Once I started getting my business going, I was like, oh shit, how do I keep this afloat? How do I get more new business? So that was one of my biggest gaps in knowledge, was marketing. And then I read tons of marketing books, and now I know better. And investing in courses, it was just like getting an MBA, because now there's so much knowledge and information out there. You don't need to go to a traditional school and get a traditional degree to acquire the knowledge that you need to apply it to your life immediately. So I enrolled in a course that cost close to $10,000 just to gain this business knowledge, and then applied it to my business. And it took about a year to like understand it, consume it, and then apply the changes, and actually see the results. So that was probably my biggest challenge in business, was learning how to run a business with no academic acumen.
How do you feel like this benefited you and helped you to be stronger at the end of all of this, and
Yeah,
just
I feel
getting up,
so
keep
empowered.
going?
Yeah, oh my God,
Mm.
I feel so empowered. I mean, I think the biggest source, like people tell me all the time, you're such a good speaker, you're so confident. I'm so confident because I take the time to read and learn, that I don't feel afraid to speak my truth or share my knowledge, because I know what I know is solid knowledge. So because I took the time to read and understand and take courses, I feel like I got it together. I know what I'm doing on a scientific level. I can help and teach others my knowledge. I'm not afraid. And I know that I can duplicate the process that I've built so far, because I took the time to invest in the knowledge and learn it on a scientific level.
Yes, I'm totally aligned with what you're saying. And there's a question, I don't remember exactly which book it was in, that I'm first of all, I'm really impressed that you make the time to do 4 to 5 books a week. That's usually my goal per month. And I feel that I have I have books everywhere in every room that remind me, and most of them are about business or finances, because like you were saying, I feel that's a gap for me. And I've had people in my life, loved ones and clients, tell me, you know, the most financial information about business and taxes of anybody that I know. And I still feel there's this huge amount of knowledge that I
Mhm.
still need to learn and absorb. Oh, when I sit down, I usually read a few pages at a time. I have books in my car. I'm wondering, how do you
Yeah.
manage to do that? Do you have books everywhere too, like in your
Yes,
car?
I
And
definitely have books everywhere. I have books on my nightstand, my reading corner, in every room, but I also have I have three versions of every book that I'm reading. So I have my paperback, I have it on my Kindle, and I have the audio version. So I can really seamlessly kind of pick up where I am, and I always stop at a chapter so it doesn't get confusing. So if I'm paperback reading it, I'll stop at that chapter, and then I'll pick up the audiobook in my car on my commute. So I'm not
mm,
missing a gap. Love my Kindle. That's also helped as well. Allows me to, carry multiple books at once. And I do audiobooks, or I read every time I'm doing a repetitive mundane task, like taking a shower or folding laundry. I'll do a chapter of an audiobook. I have like a waterproof Bluetooth speaker in my
that's amazing.
shower. Yeah,
Hmm.
during laundry, washing dishes, even cooking, I do audiobooks during that.
I have a huge goal to do the audiobook for my recent bestseller, and then moving forward all of the series of books, as that's
Yeah.
of extreme great value. And if you're listening to this too, there's a lot of complimentary audiobooks on YouTube. I've been loving finding even books from the 1970s, like Think and Grow Rich. I listened to the whole audiobook the other day when I was doing dishes, like you were saying, and folding clothes. There's another one, How to Be a Great Salesman, that was from the 1980s, I think, too. And every book, no matter which decade that it was written in, there's so many pieces and nuggets that we can pull from that and then immediately implement into our lives.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
I want to move on to the next one too. Y- Well, first of all, before we move on, you have a new article that came out in Thrive Global, speaking of writing and books, and give a chance to plug that.
Yeah. So it was really cool. The feature was really about 5 things I wish I knew as a female founder, or, before I started my
Mm.
company. And I think we all have these lessons that we learn after we fail, and after we fall on our face, we get back up. So I shared some of those things in that article. And I'm doing another feature on Entrepreneur Magazine as a continuation series for Power Woman, which I'm excited about as well.
Oh,
So you can actually find that article on my website at drnoorhealth.com. It's linked. Just click on the Thrive Global logo and you can read it.
that's amazing. So fascinating. We'll definitely put that in the show notes and I will check that out too soon.
Thank
So
you.
how do you feel like an entrepreneur needs to manage their day, or what kind of routines, like a morning routine or a night routine? And if you could share yours with us.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you definitely need a schedule and a routine, because as an entrepreneur, no one is looking over your shoulder. So if you want to stay in bed all day, you can. That's amazing. Obviously, that's not good for your business, but because of that lack of oversight, you absolutely need to self-create that routine, that discipline. And you asked about a morning routine, and my answer is you need to have a routine, whatever that means for you. So for me, as a new mom, I've got a little toddler. I want so badly to have a morning routine, because I know that doing X, Y, and Z will result in a phenomenal day for me. And I know exactly what those things are for me, kind of like a little bit 5 to 10 minute meditation, a little sun salutation or yoga stretching, maybe even read a chapter of a book, enjoy a cup of coffee before starting my day. That would be amazing. Does that happen ever? Absolutely not, because I am trying to get every minute of sleep that I can before my crying baby wakes me up. And I am rushing to get him ready and brush my teeth. And sometimes it's just a hot mess. So even though I wish I had that, I don't have that, but I do have a routine, and I try to I make a nighttime self-care routine, because the only time I have to myself is after my son is in bed. So at this point in my life right now, even though I don't have that ideal morning routine that I would love, I try to compensate that to have a nighttime self-care routine. And for me, that means after he's in bed, after I've had dinner, spend time with my husband, I take about an hour in bed to read. I make sure I read. I pull out my planner and I plan the next day, so I know what are my key things, and I focus on my needle moving tasks. So my one thing that I have to get done tomorrow to move the needle for my business, for progress, I just make sure I have that focus item before I start my day. And then I have like a little packet of my skincare stuff that obviously, as moms, sometimes we tend to neglect. But if I know that I'm in bed and I'm doing my self-care routine, I can just read and kind of be rubbing stuff on my face as I go. So that's what I do for myself as a nighttime routine. But hopefully my goal is to one day have a morning routine too.
Thank you for answering that so specifically. And I definitely resonate. I have a teenager, and I was reflecting the other day how I wasn't even sure if I washed my face with more than water for years. And a lot of people have told me, "Oh, your skin looks so good in that time too." And I was like, "Wow, thanks. It's water."
Yeah. No, oh my God. Can I be honest? There are days when I don't even get to like brush my teeth until my son goes down for his afternoon nap, because
Mhm.
it's just like get up, go, and can't do anything until he's down. So it's hard. It's really hard.
Yes, today I was reflecting on, speaking of gratitude, that's a huge routine for me. It When I wake up in the morning, being really grateful for the morning and what I have or have had the opportunity to do and be. And then before I go to sleep, it's usually about 5 to 10 things. It could even be I took a shower with hot water today because I lived in a few more than a few countries, or even in this country in the US, and haven't had water, or have had water restricted, where I was taking a shower from a bucket or not a shower head and had to sit down and had to take a very short shower. So that's something even today. It's like, wow, I took a hot shower. I had time to have a hot lunch in the middle of the day or at lunchtime. Or if I was in an office, it would be more complicated and I may not have time to grab a lunch. And having though that for me, if I don't do anything else, I feel like that's one of the most important things for me in my morning routine and night routine, that I don't necessarily have to write them down. Sometimes I say them in my head. And one of them, you reminded me of that, because one of them is I wash my face, and actually you if I wash my face with actual face wash and use toner and moisturizer, like using moisturizer even is such a luxury.
I totally get it. There's so many things that you said I resonated with, and I love
Mm,
like the book Ending Your Days with Gratitude. I understand how valuable that is. And before I had the habit, I used the 5 minute journal to kind of establish that habit where you
mm.
write down three things in the morning before you start your day that you're grateful for, and then three things at night after you've had your day. And then after you do that for a few weeks, the habit sets, so you can kind of do it mentally. And now that you mentioned it, I didn't say this, but I absolutely do this. I don't get out of bed until I do that gratitude exercise mentally and make sure I
Wow.
say, these are the things I'm grateful for. No, even though it's like a harsh wake up with a screaming baby, it's like you still have to be. And the things that you are grateful for, I can resonate as well. When I lived in Bangladesh for medical school for 6 years, um, there was no running water, was scarce, electricity was cut off
Mhm.
at a certain point every day. We had to share the electricity. There's no technology, no internet. So those are some things I do make sure that I mention I'm grateful for, is Wi-Fi, things we take for granted, right? And running water, clean drinking water. So I'm really glad that you mentioned those things that we take for granted, that we really need to intentionally be grateful for every day.
Yes, I have full body chills when you're talking about that, as for sure, I extremely resonate with what you're saying. Another thing is, like you were saying, the electricity being restricted in
Yeah.
some places. So if I can have hot tea at the end of the night, which I love. I don't know if you like chai tea, and my daughter and I love to have caffeine-free chai tea with oat milk. I started getting more into oat milk lately,
Nice.
and a little bit of honey. That's huge. I actually have the time. I'm not running around frantically or overwhelmed or working three jobs as I have a lot of times in my life. That if I have an hour at night to have a cup of tea, or even if it's a glass of wine, like I have accessibility to nice tea and wine, and get to choose and maybe watch my favorite show or read a book. There's a lot of times in my life when I did not have the time, or I guess peace of mind, space that and quiet to be able to do those things. And also even having those resources or access to them. So I for sure relate to that gratitude. And I want to move on to the next one. And how do you handle negativity in your life? How do you cope and handle that?
I'm going to answer it very simply. I walk away. If someone is being negative, or I feel the energy of negativity, I start to feel uncomfortable. Like I don't want to be in that space. So I just like walk away because I don't want to be a part of that. And I don't want it to seep into my kind of sphere of the
Mm.
positivity that I try to maintain. So instead of entertaining it or talking more about it and giving it more energy, I just physically remove myself from the situation as best as I can.
Is there any phrase that you've said before that
No, I don't say anything. I just walk away. I simply walk
that's
away.
incredible? I wish
I don't say
I
anything
need to
because
learn from you.
no, because the person or whoever is, being negative, obviously they're not aware, or they're not understanding like the impact it's having on me or their surrounding people. Otherwise, maybe they wouldn't be doing it. Or maybe they do understand and they want to be negative anyway, but I can't control their understanding or their spewing of negativity, but I can control what I say and do. And most times I don't say anything because I don't know if it's worth it. So I just walk away.
But again, that's incredible to have the bravery and courage to remove yourself from a situation that you know is going to be toxic and unhealthy for you, and then you may carry that with you, that frustration, and reflect it to other people that you love in
Yeah.
your life. I was mentioning to a client this morning in a client call to refocus on what is it that you have control of here in this. They were describing a situation where they felt a lot of overwhelm, frustration, basically lack of control
Yeah.
in the situation. And it, in order to not reflect that to people you love and others around you, or another thing they mentioned was feeling maxed out by the whole situation. It's like, okay, let's take a step back. And the only thing you can do right now is to focus on what is it that I can control,
Mhm.
just like what you said. And they can't control if they decide to walk away or what they want to say in the situation, how they plan out what are the next steps for them, anticipating different roadblocks that may come up. How do you feel about that? You agree with that?
Yeah, I agree. And I will mention that it's really hard. Like I'm just saying, yeah, walk away. Like it's so easy. It's not easy. And when you're it's depending on the situation you're in, if you're with a colleague or a coworker and they're acting a way you don't want, maybe it's easier to just walk away from them. But if you're talking to a partner and in an intimate relationship and they're being negative, that's really sensitive. It's maybe you can't just walk away, and maybe they expect you to engage, but to have the maturity and the control to not engage also in a negative way is really, really, really hard. So I'm not saying that it's easy. It's definitely taken me years to even come to the understanding that, oh, what I need to do now is not to react, is to pause and walk away and let things settle. And I'm still working on it. It's still not easy. I will say it's easier at work than it is at home.
It is, and I had an experience with my own parents where I stated what I wanted to happen or the boundaries that I wanted, and there was a say big emotional reaction and they didn't quite see eye to eye with me on that situation. And I did feel that was the only solution in that moment, was to walk away and let the dust settle
Mhm.
and then be able to talk about it again at a later time when things
Yeah.
were a bit more peaceful and calm. Because for me, I was raised in that way. I saw a lot of those examples of being reactionary,
Yeah.
like and matching someone at the level where they were at. If they were raising their voice, then in my house, then another person raised
Yeah.
their voice
Yeah.
and matched them. Or they were feeling emotional, and then the other person got just as emotional, or they were like stabbing them with jabs of
Yeah.
commentary or negativity. Then the other person brought up things from 5 years ago, that one time in May 5 years ago. It's like, what? So I
Yeah.
learned through all those experiences, none of that is helpful when we're faced with negativity or a lot of a big reaction. That all we can do is be grounded in our truth, state our truth, and let things play out how they want to play out. Hope that the other person is going to receive it in a hopefully a healthy way. And if they have their own things to work through, like you were saying, it's better to give some space, instead of give ourselves the space to respond
Yeah.
instead of just being
Yeah.
reactionary.
Yeah, I mean,
It's
I'm
huge.
glad, yeah, you and I have that understanding of what needs to be done in an ideal situation. But if you and I were in that space, I think it would turn out just fine. But if you're in a situation where the other person doesn't have this awareness or this knowledge, like, hey, it's best for both of us to just stop and walk away right now and revisit this, then how do you handle that? Because you know what needs to be done, but they don't. And they can view your lack of reaction as not caring, or something else, and it can even get worse. So it's
I
really
have heard
difficult.
that. I have heard that before, that people think if you're not matching them, then do you not, like you said, do you not care about it as
Yeah.
much?
Yeah. Yeah.
Or are you like an unemotional robot?
Yeah. Yeah.
And like, no, I believe me, I have a lot going on inside. I'm choosing to take a second because I know the outcome is going to be a lot better from a lot of experiences in reacting or saying something that I may regret. I know the outcome is going to be better to have the groundedness and come from my truth, or if I need time to process, like you said, to say something along the lines of, do you mind if I process this a bit and then get back to you? Oh, wow, I didn't realize, some phrases that I've used and with clients too, like, oh, I didn't realize how deep this was getting, and we only have about 10 minutes left on the call. Can we revisit this the next time, or can we do it in Voxer or email each other about this particular topic, because I really want to make sure that they feel heard. And similarly with my loved ones and friends and child, if I can't fully hear them at that moment, or it's just getting way too complex, like, hey, we probably need to revisit this, because I wasn't aware, like, just taking the responsibility. I wasn't aware of how deep this was going to go, or I'm really sleepy and I'm not really able to to process everything. I'm just not following. Oh, let's talk about, like, just like take it on myself, and this
That
is
that approach,
me.
I will say, Allison, I mean, that approach is so noble and I love it. And that's what we all need to do. But coming from a different culture, sometimes the language, even the words that you just said, like that approach and that language doesn't even exist when we deal with like our elders in our community, or
Mm,
even other relationships in our household or extended family members. Like it's like crazy, like what are you talking about, you're sleepy and you don't want to talk about this, or like what do you mean it's we're going to talk about this later? No, it's now or never. This is when we're having
mm.
the conversation, which isn't really a conversation at all. So it's definitely challenging. And who you're speaking with, their background, their upbringing, like you mentioned, childhood growing up was very different than what you're doing now, and you had to learn and experience. But maybe the people that you grew up with, your parents, your grandparents, maybe they still haven't caught up to that awareness, so they're still behaving in the same way, and you're trying to move on and be better, but it's just not working because you're in two different spheres. So there's a lot of
Yeah,
factors.
yes, there's a lot of factors, and then they're thinking, this is so weird, I don't like anything that you're saying to me.
Yeah, yeah, like what you're saying isn't making sense. Like I said, in my country, like there's no language that they can process like these kind of phrases that are very valid, that are very reasonable, and a mature and intelligent way to handle these kind of situations. But to some people it's incomprehensible.
Yes, I've been in some situations like that. I don't like the word. It might sound negative, but I don't mean it in a negative way. That I feel like some cultures being confrontational is more accepted.
Yeah.
And if they ask you a question and they really want to talk about it, like, they really want to talk about it and they feel this urgency.
Mm.
And I used to have a sign when I was working in an office that said, like, your lack of planning is not my emergency, something like that. That
Okay.
kind
Yeah.
of,
Yeah.
like, if someone has urgency or they think it's an emergency that they have to talk to you about something right now, a lot of times it's not. It's
Mm.
it I used to also sometimes have, on the flip side of that, feel impatient with, I just got to get these 5 things checked off with this person and just cover all of these things in this one
Mm.
conversation, and then we can move on to the next thing and everything will be great. Sometimes it just doesn't work like that. Like, they might be in a bad mood or didn't eat properly that day, didn't sleep well, and through a lot of experiences and developing more of my EQ, I have to analyze, is this really a good time? And
Yeah.
if it's not, for myself and the other person, because we both need to be able to absorb what we're talking about. And
Yeah.
if it's not, it, like, letting them off the hook and letting myself
Yeah.
off the hook. Like
Yeah.
maybe you just need to go take a nap, like, or maybe
Yeah.
I just need a nap,
Yeah,
you know?
maybe I'm so glad that you mentioned EQ here because we have to realize that the way people behave has really nothing to do with us. It's all about them and their experience. So if someone's being not nice to you, or they're not reacting in a way that you want them to, or they're not receptive of what you're saying, it really has nothing to do with you. It's because, like you said, they need a nap, they're hungry, they had a bad day. So really try to be more accepting of that, and loving of that, that, hey, it's okay that you're having a bad day, because I have those bad days too. And if you think back, you probably, misbehaved or acted in a not nice way to someone who was in the shoes that you're in now. So it's really important to be loving and understanding of other people's perspectives, and not take it personally when you don't receive the reaction you're expecting.
Amen. That's probably one of the highlights. That was
Yeah.
incredible. So
Love it.
I want to move on to the next question, Dr. Noor. What traits about yourself helped you throughout your entrepreneurship journey?
Yeah, I would say the trait of resiliency, and I know,
Mm,
Allison, you can relate to some of the next points that I want to mention for this question. I used to be super super ashamed of my failures, and they're failures that I defined to be failures because of my cultural expectations, my societal expectations. Where I come from in my community, it's, you have these options, career options, and if you're not in those career options, you're basically worthless, or you're a failure. And I labeled myself as that for many many years. And it took me a while to embrace that failure and call it success, which is what I'm doing now. And I talk about this a lot. You'll see in my social media, and I'm very open to talk about failures, because that's how we rise. And it's very, society just likes to highlight, like, your revenue and your successes, but no one talks about all the shit you had to go through to get there, and the number of times you had to fail and fall. So I want to talk about the failures more, so those who are going through that failure can know and understand that it's normal. Everybody goes through it. In fact, it's obligatory. You have to fail in order to reach that next level of success. So I would say my trait is really resiliency and not giving up, and being able to apply everything that I learned. So when I consume and read all these books, it's not just like, check, oh, I read this book. I'm immediately applying that new knowledge to my business, to better myself, to better my relationships, to better, my business, and really embrace the failures as very crucial stepping stones to the next level of success.
yes, for sure. Yeah, and you're right. I hard resonate with all of those. And I feel, as you, another quick point, as you rise yourself and you learn and implement all of these things, absorb the information, then you're able, as you were saying at the beginning, to turn around and share that knowledge and mentor others around you and be this great shining light. I'd like to describe it as a lighthouse, and people need that lighthouse. Is not necessarily as we are moving the lighthouse all around and frantically going around to try to get people to need the lighthouse. People just need it when they come by. They need to be able to absorb and hear what we're having to say. And another thing, like, waves crash on it sometimes. The lighthouse gets beat up sometimes by storms and still stands strong and is rooted like a huge tree, or the cement in the ground that it's built with. That's how to to paraphrase, that's what I'm hearing too. And have I felt that for a long time about myself, and sometimes not always proud of that, because I was labeled the strong one in my family, or she doesn't really need our support, our advice, because she just always figures it out. She's just always fine. She always learns from her mistakes, or she's just fine.
Mhm, mhm.
And part of that was learning my own vulnerability too. Understanding what vulnerability meant for me and applying that in my life is an ongoing growth edge. Like you said, that resilience, getting back up again. or another key point I wanted to bring up, there's a book, and I don't remember the name of it, that I'm reading right now, that they talked about one of the number one successes. Well, one of the number one reasons. Wait, okay. Let me rephrase that. The question was exactly, what is the number one thing that really, like, wildly successful people have in common? And what they found in their research was they all had a huge failure in their life, whether that was losing everything in a law case, like a judgment against them, a really nasty divorce, a bankruptcy, like falling flat on their face. Basically, that was the number one thing they all had in common. And I had full body chills when I read that. I was like, oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
I'm definitely, yeah, goosebumping right now. That
Yes, and like almost tears. Even I'm
yeah.
even feeling tears almost saying it out loud, because for so long, like you were saying, and you read in my book, I beat myself up that why did I have to go through that? Why wasn't I more responsible? Or I'm bad with money, or why can't I have just stuck it out and finished medical school, because I went to a year of medical school and worked so hard to get there. Why didn't I just finish and just do it? Just go with it, instead of needing to go against the grain or needing to take some time off and then get my master's later. Like all these things that didn't quite make sense to me in the moment
Mhm.
all start clicking as you have success, or realize, oh my gosh, I'm not, another point, realizing I'm not alone in this. I'm not the only person that's gone through a bankruptcy or gone through a divorce or fallen flat on my face and not knowing where I was going to turn next, or how I was going to succeed in the situation, how I was going to pay for food or pay for rent sometimes, eating one meal a day. Like I'm not the only one
Yeah.
who's gone through these. And actually that's a strength, like you were saying, rephrasing,
Mhm.
turning those failures or mistakes, learning lessons, growth edges, that's actually now one of our biggest strengths that we can then turn around and send the elevator back down, especially to other women that are going through something similar. Or they may read, like you're sharing on social media. That's a way that you're reaching your hand down and being like, I'm on solid ground right now. And this is my hand. And you can come up here with us. Like there's space for everybody here at the top.
Mhm. Mhm. Oh, that was so powerful. Everything you said, Allison. I'm just, yeah, just feeling it, feeling all of it. And thank you for sharing. And, if you didn't share that struggle that you went through, then how would you know, or how would anyone else know that it's okay and you've made it? Or if they're going through it, they feel that light, at the end of the tunnel, that, okay, she made it, I can make it too, So it is important to be vocal about our experiences. And it's something I struggle with, because I hid behind, or was ashamed for years, and it took a long time for me to be vocal about it. But I am glad that we're both doing it now, because it is important for other women going through it.
Yes, it's a gift. And the I wanted to move on to the next one. What are
Yes.
your most overlooked strategies that you feel like are areas that sometimes people don't have any idea about, and why are they important to you in
Yeah,
business?
I'll mention one strategy that I think is overlooked, and that's creating systems, and documenting everything you do from the start. I think it's really important. It's overlooked because when you're starting a business, there's so much to do, and documenting it is definitely not on the radar. But the reason I want to be very specific about why this is so important, is because there's going to be a period of your business, hopefully that's the goal, is when you have growth, and you have tremendous growth. And sometimes the growth is too fast for you to keep up with. That's when those systems and documentation is going to come into clutch. And if you're going through that and you haven't created it from the start, you're going to fall on your face flat because you won't have the capacity to create it later because you're growing too much. You're growing too fast and too much. So doing everything in a systemic way and creating standard operating procedures, or even just like writing down your processes on a Google Sheet or Word doc is helpful, because then you can pull from that, you can expand that, you can modify it to create more complex strategies and systems. But really the key, the significance of creating systems and structures and frameworks and documenting from the start is not at the start, but it's for 3 to 5 years later when you're growing, you're going to need to go back to that and rely on that.
Yeah, to add to that, I'm almost out of space on my Google Drive because I have so many folders and SOPs. And it is from mentoring a lot of clients, I have seen it's a growth edge for a lot of us to even feel that it's valuable, worth our time to create those SOPs. And I've even, as a person who loves strategies and structure, and I feel that I can be more spontaneous within structure, it's part of my personality. I have found, and even parenting, I think it's similar, that sometimes I have to overcome the idea that, oh, if I just do this myself, then I can save some time here because I don't need to explain it to someone else. I always go back to the example about teaching my daughter how to unload the dishwasher. I feel it's been like 5 years that I've been teaching her how to do it, and now she's even better than me at it.
Yeah.
And similarly, when we're writing SOPs of breaking down all the steps, it might feel like overkill and, oh my gosh, it would be faster. I just did it myself. What if someone doesn't do it better than me or as good as me? And delegating is almost a spiritual task, in my opinion. Letting go of some of that control, because we have quite a big team now at Empire Life, and communicating the step by step and having SOPs so then they can train someone else or a new person can come on easily, and have the onboarding process be super smooth. A lot of times, a quick thing I wanted to mention is they find something that I missed. Like if they're using a software, for example, they may see a faster way to do something that I didn't even include in the SOP. Or did you also know there's this other feature up here to the right on the team meeting? And I'm thinking, oh, this is incredible. I didn't even see that. I've been doing it like this other thing because I'm so focused on, I got to get this done and I'm just going to do it now. I'm not as expansively looking at it as someone on my team that's their sole responsibility.
Yes. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And it gives a great sense of empowerment, because recently so I didn't always have this. I did not have SOPs. I did not have systems and structures and strategies. But now as I'm growing and I'm like, oh shit, well, I should have done this before and I didn't. So I better do it now before I grow too much and it's going to be overwhelming for me. So I did, prioritize that. And recently I was working with, in the public sector with a grant consultant and some people who are helping with government bids and contracts. And one of our introductory calls was a checklist that if you even want to participate in this game, we need to know, do you have a business plan, a strategic plan? There was a whole bunch of things in the checklist, and I felt so good that I said yes to most of them, whereas I know a whole lot of people, peers and colleagues who would definitely say no, and were either on par or sometimes they're even more experienced in my business. So I felt so incredibly proud of myself that even if I don't need it right now, to know that yes, I'm doing things the right way, my business is headed in the right direction because I have all of these things in place.
That's incredible, and good luck with that as well. I recently applied for a $10,000 grant, and fingers crossed.
Wow.
All of that could be utilized to get someone on my team a new
Yes.
laptop or pay for better software for
Yeah.
all the things that we need. There's always something that
Yes.
we need, and I'm very proud of you for putting yourself out there.
Yeah, thank you. We might have to talk a little bit more about that, Allison, because I didn't get far, but maybe we can talk more and you can help me in that sector.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And I want to move on because we're almost out of time. Before we hop off, what are the 3 concepts that you want to leave the audience with?
Yes, well, I don't know if we have time for 3, so I'll just share
Okay,
one
just
because I know
one. That's
we've
good.
got to end it. Yeah. And this is like a little, I don't know if it's like a little immigrant cultural hack, but as a business owner, what I've learned is you mentioned the power of delegation and how important that is to let someone else do something who, if they're better than you at it, and to kind of give up that control and power, which results in a broader scope that you may not have seen. But as business owners, sometimes we don't have that capacity or the funds to hire someone or to delegate it. So what I do is I try to do it cheaper the first time around by outsourcing. Most of my team that helps me manage my brand are all over the country. So they're in Asia, they're in Singapore, Philippines, Singapore, and Canada. And I found that it's like a third of the cost and they're happy to do the work. So definitely start there, do it cheaper. Don't do it yourself, but hire cheaper help to do it. And then of course, when you scale and then you're able to afford them, then go professional level. So if you realize and understand the importance of delegation, but can't necessarily afford it, there's definitely alternative options to outsource that work with contractors and freelancers who are abroad.
Yes, and a lot of our team is in Mexico. Was
Oh,
We're in
cool.
Texas, and they are incredible at what they do, and also experts. So I wanted to add that too. That there's a lot of people in those countries that are experts in what they're doing, and at the same time are a third
Yeah.
a third of the cost, and the cost of living is really different.
Yes.
For them are the exchange rate, and that feels that's a really empowering to come from that place too, and to be able to have those relationships, because I feel like we're like all family and really supporting each other, and they really believe in our mission, and to be able to help their lives. Like one person on our team, their husband recently lost their job in the pandemic. So she's working full time. And then after she gets off of work, she's also putting in all of her hours for Empire Life. Whereas before she could work a little bit part time and have the other half of the day to do Empire Life support and work for us. And now she's doing it after her kids go to bed, like 3 to 4 hours at night. And she is the sole breadwinner, and she relies on that money,
Yeah.
and that feels amazing to be
Yeah.
able to impact. Of course it's very devastating. uh, her having the ability to just step in to that
Mhm.
leadership role in her family is incredible.
Yeah, that is.
And I want to do a quick plug too before we hop off, that make sure that you go check out that article on Thrive Global about the 5 concepts of what you needed to know as a female founder. Did I say that right?
Yep, yep. 5 things
Uh,
I wish I knew as a female founder.
and that's on drnoorhealth.com.
Yep, you can find that as a link on my website.